Hey everyone, welcome to the Human Cloud Podcast, the spot where executives, entrepreneurs, and investors come to drive the freelance economy forward. So today we have Joy Batra. Joy is the definition of where the freelance economy is going in terms of the freelancers themselves. So the fastest growing segment is what we like to call executive level freelancers. And what that looks like are freelancers who could easily be your directors, your VPs, your general counsel, in Joy's case, your general counsel. And this segment, some of the data would call them 100K plus freelancers, but this segment shows one of the most exciting changes in the freelance economy in that freelance can unlock large and diverse scopes of work. So 5 years ago, when talking about, well, how can freelancers really help? Generally, it's skewed marketing. Yes, there was Gigster and TopTal and various other platforms, but it was pre the rise of niche platforms. Niche meaning the best in a skill or a region, and niche in terms of they can cover the full stack of that niche. And so take Ripple over in Atlanta for marketing. Ripple can take over every facet of your marketing, not just give you one social media freelancer. And so Joy represents these individuals. Specifically in her case, we're talking about fractional legal support. And we are going to get very technical in terms of what does a client relationship look like. We're then going to work back into what does she consider herself? Is she a freelancer? Is she fractional? Here's a hint, she calls herself interim. We're then going to discuss what is so difficult about the term freelance and how it's the best of. And so we always pull up a slide with Winston Churchill that says freelance is the worst term except for all others that have been tried. And that is because freelance is everything and nothing at the same time, but it's better than gig, it's better than open, it's better than liquid workforce. It's good enough. So what I want you to really listen for in this episode is I want you to go deep into the mindset of why, to be honest, it's going to hurt some who say this, but why the world's most ambitious people do turn towards freelancing. I want you to really deeply understand that. And one of the number one things we've heard is it's not because they make more. It's not because they want to work on a beach. It's usually because they can make more of an impact. And that is definitely true with someone like Joy. So sit back, enjoy, and most important, go drive some change. All right, Joy, welcome to the pod. First off, whereabouts you sitting?
Right now, I am in a hotel room in New York. Super excited to speak with you, but normally I split my time between Boston and New York.
So, Joy, let the listeners know the glorious from the great state of New Hampshire, where you grew up, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, absolutely. New Hampshire is where I grew up, went to high school. Before that, we were kind of immigrants and my family moved around a lot. So I was a third culture kid. So I lived in Indonesia, I lived in Korea, a bunch of different countries. And then we settled in, yes, the great state of New Hampshire, where we live free and or die and eat amazing cheeseburgers.
You should have seen. So when I brought Farty home, we saw the bumper sticker or the whatever, and she was like, does that say live free or die? I'm like, yeah, it's New Hampshire. And I grew up with it, so it never struck me as, interesting. And she was like, wow, that is a very extreme, bold take. I was like, it is.
Yeah, very hardcore. That's how we do it.
What, and you were in Nashua though, right?
I was in Nashua. Yeah, absolutely. That's where I did high school and is still one of my favorite places in the state.
So describe Nashua for our listeners. Describe Nashua.
Well, there's a phenomenal bowling alley. That might be the whole thing.
That's it. Hey, there's a nice river. There's lots of motorcycles.
Yeah, no, in high school, there was pretty much just the bowling alley and the Pheasant Lane Mall, which was amazing because all the people from Massachusetts would come back up. Yes, you remember the Pheasant Lane Mall. It was incredible.
That's where we got everything. New Hampshire's where you get alcohol and fireworks.
Exactly. So that will probably always be New Hampshire. But yeah, my memories are bowling alley and shopping mall filled with people from Massachusetts.
That is so funny. So I'll give you a quick little story, and I don't think Farney listens to this, so I think I'm good. But when we were either 16, 17, or 18, it was in high school. Rumor has it that there was a club that allowed either like 18 and over or 16 and over, something like that.
Yes.
Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, okay. There was one in Manchester, but I don't know about, yeah.
There was one in Nashua. And so we drove all the way to Nashua, New Hampshire, pretty sure it's Nashua, just to go to this like club, these little high schoolers, right? And it just blew our mind because we grew up in this very bubbled, not a problem in the world type place. And so we got to Nashua, we were like, oh my God, what is this debauchery? It was like life. It was like Las Vegas to us.
Okay, well, clearly I was not part of, like, you would probably already know I was not part of the cool kids club, but I didn't know. Everyone I knew used to go to Manchester, and I was like, wow, that is far and a lot of commitment.
That is so funny. So listen, there's so much that we could talk about. Actually, before you mentioned Indonesia and Korea, what were some of the favorite places? And was it, was there things that you were like, hey, each place was unique in its own way, and I loved Korea for this, and each was. Tell me about what it was like living in those places.
Yeah, so I guess the first thing is I was really young. We did all of this moving around before I was 13, and that's when we came to New Hampshire. But I spent 6 years in Jakarta and absolutely loved it. And I think, it's hard not to love a place that has palm trees and sunshine all the time. But I think it was a really just kind of very diverse place because remember, I'm quite old, so there was no Instagram, there was barely internet, we could barely chat with people anywhere else. So getting to explore that and see people from all over the world and have those be my classmates and my friends, that was just mind-blowing. I had a Texas accent, even though nothing about me has anything to do with Texas, except all my friends were from Texas because their parents had moved to Indonesia for their work. So it was a really great mind meld. One year was Texas, and then another year I had a British accent because I went to a British school. So I was constantly in a state of confusion. But, it was a great way to live because I think that's kind of what changed my relationship to work because there wasn't this like one paradigm that I had to kind of subscribe to. I realized that there were so many different ways of doing things that we weren't being told back home.
Yeah, no, that is a theme we'll continuously go over for the next 45. Did you go to Singapore while you were in Indonesia?
I graduated from middle school in Singapore because that was the year that Suharto was being kind of overthrown, the prime minister of Indonesia. And so school basically ended the day after my birthday in May, and we all had to be evacuated to Singapore and finish out the school year there.
Oh my God. Okay. Steve King, if you're listening, I know your ears are chirping. I love Singapore. It's where I launched my last company. And I was in River Valley. Do you know where that is? Where you guys were?
No, this was a long time ago. I only know like Sentosa Island and the mall.
Yeah, and you were little.
Again, I'm back with the malls. I don't know what this is.
It's so interesting. And living in Singapore actually gave me a framework and reference point for work myself. But it was interesting. It more taught me, hey, you can be disciplined in work and that's okay. You can be as meritocratic as possible. Because were you exposed to the Singaporean way of life / schooling when you were there? Because it's cutthroat.
Kind of only by osmosis, because we had kind of just come in for a couple of weeks. We stayed with the American school kind of structure, but you could see that it was a very organized city. We had the T-shirts with kind of a lot of the different regulations on them. They were a meme at the time, but but no, I didn't actually go. Yeah.
Especially going to Nashua where it's like, hey, there's actually no rules. Any rules you think you have, we're not going to enforce them. That is so awesome. So listen, we've had a good old time talking about Singapore, but so the one of the overwhelming themes before actually hopping on that I really want our listeners to walk away from is that the fastest growing trend in the freelance economy right now is that individuals that once were choosing, they've been 5+ years at a firm, whether it's lawyers, whether it's engineers, whether it's software developers, marketers, you name it, but they are the cream of the crop. So they are the directors, the VPs, they're on the fast promotional track. And those individuals are choosing to freelance either full-time or doing it significantly on the side and then becoming full-time. And that is the fastest growing segment. And the reason I find that so important is because the freelance economy is this weird thing where it's everything and nothing at the same time. And 5 years ago, when we said freelance, what we really meant was you can hire people through Upwork or Fiverr. And what that really meant was you could have most of your marketing could get done through that. But then when trying to really scale it, it was really tough because we couldn't say, hey, director, hire someone just like you. Now that's not true, right? And you are the epitome of someone that 10 years ago most likely would either be working in the biggest law firm or having your own law firm, but saying, hey, I'm interim, I'm fractional, I'm going to write a book on freelancing. That just wouldn't even hit the lexicon of the freelance economy. So super pumped for our listeners to just, number one, meet you. But I guess, Joy, do you want to give a brief on yourself? I know it took me 12 minutes or 13 minutes to even get into it, but do you want to do a little intro on yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm Joy Batra, the founder of Quartz Consulting and the author of the Freelance Mindset, Unleashing Your Side Hustles for Better Work, Play, and Life. My career has kind of spanned some of the usual suspects. I worked in finance, had some short stints at law firms, and then the unusual suspect that then happened was I got the opportunity to act in Bollywood immediately after law school. So I did that instead of going full-time to a law firm. And that's kind of how I stumbled into freelance and why I started taking an unconventional route around a decade ago before it was more popular like it is now. Over the years, I've had a range of full-time and freelance work, but at the moment, I've got a portfolio of sort of interim general counsel work, a little bit of a portfolio on consulting on go-to-market and strategy, and then the last piece is really around my creative aspirations, which don't include acting anymore, but they include things like writing, and I'd say dance is actually a really big part of it. Even though I don't monetize that, I really just use that to fuel the energy that will allow me to do the legal work and allow me to do any other strategy work that I do well.
I love it. I love it. And so let's get into if we can, let's be super boring and get into your educational background. I know I sound like, I know I'll use the example. I know I sound like an immigrant parent asking for what those letters are, but in the most boring way possible, Joy. Only because, like we said, one of the themes is, this is not just someone that couldn't get a job, right? That's 5 years ago. It was honestly kind of tough to answer that question of, well, are these people unemployed? And the answer is, kind of, not really. They choose to do this, and then the leader would go, well, I heard about this book, this person talking about how much they hate corporate life and how they got fired and now they're friends. And I'm like, I know, don't listen to that. Like, these people could easily be employed. But so what is your sort of educational and career path? How's that looked?
Yeah. So I studied economics and psychology at Boston College undergrad, and then I worked at Goldman for 2 summers and then full-time during the financial crisis. During that time, I realized that I was going to continue with the plan to go to law school. I went to Harvard for law school and Harvard for business school. I did them at the same time for a JD MBA. And coming out of it, I really did intend to go to a law firm. I actually had multiple offers and I had accepted one. So no, even though I was asked many times, could you not get a job? No, there was a job available to me. And I really chose this path that was really risky at the time because we didn't have the infrastructure and we didn't have the knowledge about how to do it, but has evolved so much over the last decade or so.
I love it. And tell me about Quartz, because let me just put my own sort of leader / executive / CEO hat on. And if someone tells me, hey, I'm a lawyer, I get it, right? If someone tells me, hey, I'm a freelancer, cool, but what do you freelance with? And so help me understand what Quartz, right? What are you guys doing?
Yeah, so this is one of the biggest challenges that freelancers have, and it's really this communication gap between the many things that might be in their portfolio and what somebody who is not a freelancer can really understand and articulate. So this is one of the things that we've done with Quartz, because given that I have a variety of, training and background, I can actually work and contribute in a number of different functions, and I like doing so. So to me, that includes legal, that includes operations, that includes strategy, and it has included marketing. And Quartz is this umbrella which allows me to basically custom make the projects with the right clients when we find a problem that they need to solve. And I can be the Swiss Army knife that basically helps them jump in. And so what I really encourage freelancers to do, and I'll get to your question about Quartz, is when they have this variety, because now I've listed a handful of things. And if you were trying to remember this list, it's going to be really hard at a cocktail party to know like all the different elements of that. But I really encourage freelancers to come up with 2 or 3 themes that can tie everything together. And then like the layers of an onion, you can peel back in conversation. You can dive deeper into all of those. So my cocktail party answer is that I'm corporate and creative, but that's me. The Quartz answer is that we're in finance, media, and tech. Now, what does that mean? Well, within finance and tech, really, I've been within the crypto space, really focused on fintech, DeFi, and any kind of blockchain applications in the last, and that's been for the last, 6 years or so. In the last 1 year, there's been more interest in AI. And so I'm really working on getting up to speed on that particular area. And then media has been kind of a catch-all to include, I've done consulting for actual media companies, like a digital magazine that is now print, a handful of other communities. And then that also includes my writing, which I consider media.
Gotcha. And how do you bridge, like why not just have a full-time job? Sure. Why not just collect the benefits of working at a Goldman, right? Why, super blunt, why not just do that?
I think the answer to that question has, really varied for me over the years. I think when I first started to freelance, I wanted as much flexibility over my schedule as possible. Like that was the kind of freedom that was really attractive to me. And 10 years ago, I had a very concrete reason because I had done this audition and signed a contract with a production house in India to act in Bollywood. And so I actually needed time to go for auditions and to continue acting training. But I also had 6-figure student loans. And so I needed some amount of work that I could do for a couple of hours that would both pay the bills and also scratch that itch because I had trained so long in this particular type of work and I wanted to use it. So back then it was about time. I went through a period around 2017. I'm in crypto, so that was a really busy time. That was a really big bull market for our industry. And financially, it worked out far better for me to be fractional rather than to work full time. And that was really interesting. I started to meet more fractional executives who had kind of found a way to pick the most interesting projects or find the matches with the most interesting teams and create a whole that was bigger than the sum of the individual parts. So they could work on what they wanted to, continue to grow their network, and they were earning more than they actually could have in a normal employment situation. Now things have changed. We're not in a bull market the way we were back then, but what's interesting about being fractional now is the risk management. And that's what really appeals to me and the other fractional executives I meet. So right now we're seeing waves of layoffs and, unfortunately, we don't know how long that's going to persist. But if you have this portfolio of clients and potentially even careers, which can be helpful, and I'll dive into that in a second, if one of them goes away, you're not left just holding the bag and there's nothing and you have all these bills to pay and no income. If one of your careers or clients goes away with a portfolio, you can kind of cobble together a replacement and figure it out. So you're not starting from scratch. And I've really seen that be effective for a number of fractional folks who, especially in the pandemic, found that one of their industries completely disappeared, like a performing artist that I know who also happened to be a tech founder and a designer. And so when live performances shut down, she was able to really focus on her consulting in the design and tech space until everything else kind of rebalanced and she could change that allocation.
That is a very common one that we hear. And I think what's different though is it's not a, back to like, it's not the, hey, I couldn't get a job, so freelancing was the only income there, right? Like there was some, there were some very, very, very only freelance type situations you could have. So for example, in the book, we highlight a lot of mothers that were executives that left to raise their kid, but realized, wow, I still want to work. Now, it breaks my heart that a job couldn't provide that. I think that's the company that lost that. Those people were the ones that really, really, I would just look at them and say, you're idiots. Why wouldn't you provide that person flexible work that was based around them? Because you just lost them. But now to your point, I mean, we've seen these past, and I've seen it over 10 years, but we've seen these past 2 years. It's, wow, Microsoft was great making $200 a year. but now that goes away and I've bet everything around me on that 200 a year. And wait, tech isn't hiring right now. Wait, VCs have frozen, so even startups I can't go to. Holy crap, this isn't what I expected. So risk management is a huge component. Now, how would you describe being a freelancer? And what I mean, I really want to dig into you and those around you. Like, is this something where you feel like, hey, I am a freelancer? Or is this something where I'll leave it really broad. How do you describe being a freelancer?
I love this question because this came up over and over when I was writing my book. So in the process of writing my book, I interviewed 50 freelancers and I had the opportunity to reflect on my own journey with freelancing and hear other people's experiences. And one of the common themes that really kind of interests me, but also frustrates me, is the way that entrepreneurship is really fetishized in our society and freelancing is stigmatized. And if you really think about it, both of them have the same skills. You think like an owner, you're a self-starter, you make things come together with scarce resources that are not under your control. I think that's the business school definition of it. But essentially, you're solving problems on your own on a number of different domains, from sales to execution to operations, legal, tax. You have to do everything. And until you get large enough potentially to outsource some of that, in which case you're a manager too. So these are really kind of very overlapping circles that I think hiring managers don't always appreciate. So for me, I consider myself a freelancer because I want people to understand just how much work goes into being a freelancer. And really, this is true for kind of any solopreneur, whether you're a fractional executive or you're kind of earlier in your career or taking a different path. That kind of ownership and entrepreneurial ability is super important. That said, I think that, there were a lot of freelancers that I met who were afraid to call themselves freelancers because they thought, they might not be taken seriously by the market, that people might think, oh, they couldn't get a real job, or, oh, they must not be successful and they haven't done anything big yet. So I think that's part of the problem, in that the people who are branding themselves as not freelancers may actually be the most successful freelancers and not necessarily getting associated with this entire group. So I love that this podcast is really diving into this issue because I think it's something we need so much more awareness on.
It's 100%. And we could go, it's funny, actually, let's go pound for pound on sequentially books / maybe even terms that you think really bring us back. I'll go first. There was a book called The 4-Hour Workweek that if I could burn one book, I would burn that and wish it never came out. I think it was the absolute worst directionally piece of literature to describe what this is. And it gave the total wrong message that individuals that freelanced were doing it because they wanted to sit on a beach and only work 4 hours a week. And I wished it was called, if you want to work 4 hours a week, here's resources for therapy, not here's how to whatever it talked about. And so, if you're working 4 hours a week, that's great. Good for you. But the reality is, as an enterprise leader, I don't want to hire someone that only wants to work 4 hours a week. So sorry, you just made my life so much harder. But I'll go first with that book. I just despise. I hate that book so much.
Yeah, it was so interesting because on the one hand, it allowed people to think differently about their work and realize, okay, they didn't necessarily have to climb the corporate ladder that had been, forced upon them by society. So I thought that was interesting. But the title and the positioning of that book really creates a lot of misconceptions that are hard for freelancers to overcome. I hopefully, agree with you on the fact that now freelancers are branded as people who only want to work part-time, when that's actually just a small section of freelancers. I think freelancers in general are really, they're optimizing for one of three things, which is, again, why it gets hard to compare freelancing to entrepreneurship and why we get confused. With an entrepreneur, it's very simple. You meet somebody who started a company, you assume, oh, they're maximizing revenue. They want like $1 billion company. They're trying to be a unicorn. That's it. For a freelancer, you actually don't know what metric they're trying to solve. So there are some who want to have this 4-hour work week and their ultimate success metric is free time. And that's fine. There are others who really want to have revenue and to work on interesting products and projects. And that's their success metric. But you don't know that. And then there's kind of a third group who are looking for kind of creative fulfillment and are looking to basically branch out in a direction that a career path that's more linear wouldn't let them go in. So a lot of times I see artists in this group who have to take more of a stable job and then want to fill their creative passions through some sort of freelancing outlet. But it could be any one of these three. And we're just, pretty confused when we meet a freelancer because we don't get to this next level of, why are you freelancing and what are your goals? What kind of freelancer are you?
That is such a good way to spin it. That is such a good way to spin it. And I would add to, you don't know if someone is saying freelance because they can't find a job. Like that is kind of the reality, is some people can't get a job. So then they call themselves freelancer. They write a book about freelancing, something like that. And then you go, whoa. Let's look at your tax returns the past 5 years to make sure you're actually a good freelancer before you go off and branding yourself. Is it? So, to your point, you nailed it, right? It's tough to know I would say the best freelancers that I've ever worked with are the ones that are indexing for impact. And we have this phenomenal quote of this guy, Brooks Lockett, out in North Carolina, actually. And what he said was, you turn into a different person when you turn into a different person when you're directly incentivized. And to him, that's why he freelances. He's like, I can make a better impact freelancing than I could working for one company. And to me, that rings true, right? The best leaders, what's the quote? It's like the best leaders don't leave companies, they leave bad bosses in politics.
Yeah.
And so whenever someone asks me like, why do people freelance? My answer is always, get to the person who's doing it for the impact. And there might be other reasons, but if the person genuinely loves their work, then they'll find out that freelancing might be a quicker path to making a bigger impact. So that was a really good point on your part.
I love that. And that's one of the things that's been on my mind lately, as you see managers talk about, oh, well, I don't want to hire somebody who has a side hustle because they're not going to be devoted to their day job. And it's like, actually, no. Maybe the reason they're not devoted to their day job is you don't have the right incentives in place. If they work really hard and create a big value or impact for you, are they going to get compensated for it? Will there be any upside? And if that's not the case, it's only rational for them to take the side hustle or to go somewhere else where they can have that impact. And that's really where you're starting to see freelancing, attract people who are really, really passionate, really, really talented, and can have those outsized contributions. It's really fascinating, and we don't talk about it enough.
Yeah, no, I love it. So in the spirit of clarity and really getting tactical around, okay, we know that it's tough to understand a freelancer because it's such a broad term. It's tough to know why the person is freelancing, because when you say someone's an entrepreneur, it's pretty easy to know, okay, they want to build something, right? And they want to build something big, not just a course, right? I will say the whole solopreneur debate and like Twitter warriors are so annoying, because also like you're not helping anyone but yourself usually when you're like doing that. And so saying, hey, enterprise leaders hire freelancers, and they look and they go, no, this person's trying to sell me their course. You're like, oh crap. Okay, sorry, it's not a freelancer. But so let's get tactical into, what does it mean if someone comes to you? Let's assume I'm we'll say VP. So I'm a VP at Microsoft in the office. Specifically, I run teams. How can you help me? What would a working with you look like?
Got it. So if I were to meet a VP of Microsoft and try to understand what they need help with, is that the question? The hypothetical we're working with?
Yeah, we could even just say, executive, right? You can executive. You can make it a small company, large company, you name it. But let's say we just met in the elevator, right?
Yeah.
What's going to happen next?
Yeah. I mean, look, most freelancers and fractional executives, they all get their jobs through word of mouth. The vast majority are not, getting most of their revenue from a platform. Platforms are great and they do exist. And we are starting to see that shift. But because it's still a new market, there is a lot of activity in this word of mouth space. So the job of a freelancer is like the job of any salesman or any salesperson or a founder of a company, is to understand this person's problem. What are they dealing with? And then figure out a way to see how what you can offer can give them some value to solve that problem. So depending on what you're doing, I might flip the conversation back on you and ask what you're working on and what's, how are things going? And then you will give me either something that's going really great or something that you're maybe struggling with. And then I can look through my past projects kind of on the fly, because I've done this a few times, and see kind of what can I offer that will help you. So probably if this is a tech situation, I will probably be making an offer on the go-to-market side of things, or maybe on regulation if we're dealing with, some sort of policy change, maybe hypothetically on AI. But we don't know because we have this really early discovery moment to see, well, what kind of freelancer are you, but also what kind of executive are you? And we don't know enough.
Okay, I love it. So let's say I'm building a productivity SaaS. We'll go from there. Building a productivity SaaS, and you could help me with go-to-market or regulation. What does helping me look like? Is this going to be a day rate? Do you have a project cost for me? Well, I'll even throw out there. Do you want a job? What does the next step look like?
Yeah, so this is where freelancers really need to understand what suite they actually want to offer in the long term. I think that it's, easiest to start with an hourly rate, because both of you are feeling each other out and trying to see if this is a good fit, especially if it's a new area that you haven't worked in directly. I think that's a really nice way to start hourly. Once you start getting into a place, if you're a freelancer who has a standardized offering, you may just have a menu and you say, great, I do go to market for small enterprises, and I can help you get plugged into this network, and this is what it would look like. And you would have, probably 3 prices of like good, better, best offerings that you could do, and can go from there. And this may end up, the challenge of having a very fixed offering is that it may end up, becoming a longer term conversation. It may become, let's keep in touch, let's build this relationship and see where this can go. Or you may actually land on the exact pain point that they're trying to solve. But I don't know. We're just in the elevator and I don't quite know what the situation is.
So the situation is we need to get up to $1 million in growth over the next year. We'll leave it there. Our budgets are pretty open. We do have a couple quotes from some go-to-market related agencies, but we want to work with the freelancer. So what would help me understand, and let's not abstract this in terms of all freelancers, literally just you and Quartz, right? Because I think where leaders struggle, what's tough, show me the action, right? What exactly what we do?
Yeah. Okay. So for go-to-market and Quartz specifically, I think that, this could be an interesting long-term play, but in the immediate term, I would really want to focus on how can you essentially, I would be focusing on my core offerings, which are right now legal and regulatory. So so to pivot the conversation, but we will still get to the technical aspect, I would say, great. That sounds awesome. Let me send you a proposal. If they have anything that they can send me about the problem, that would be great. But if not, I would say, fine, let me send you a proposal. Then I will go home and do my research on what is this new policy change that they're dealing with. And I will check some of the experience that I've had in the past, see how close of a match it is. And then I would give them 3 options. So my good, better, best for something policy related would be something like an hourly option, a project-based option, and then probably a retainer-based option. And we can kind of see if they have time to discover this more, before I send the proposal, we can maybe get a little more specifics around what their needs are and what they've tried in the past that did or didn't work for them. But assuming we've got all that information, that's kind of how I would approach the pricing conversation. And I would want there to be some room for negotiation. And so you might want to look at what your peers are charging. I've done this relatively recently, but if this is a new situation, you'll want to talk to, 3 or 4 people who have enterprise clients and who have done something similar, see how much they're charging so that you're either within the ballpark, or if you're trying to add a new element to your portfolio, coming in a little bit under market so that you can hopefully get the experience, have a happy client, and then also add value that's kind of commensurate with your experience.
Gotcha. And help me understand, the options, right? So you mentioned, we meet as an executive, as a founder, as an owner. The reality is we have so many different mandates. And the last thing that we want to do is actually have to understand everything. We just want someone we can trust, right? Which is why we have direct reports and why usually we work with agencies that give us the whole no one got fired by using IBM type predicament. And so what's tough about freelance is I don't want to be responsible, right? I don't, as the leader, I don't want to be the one making all the decisions. I want the trusted partner. And so help me understand, if I don't go with you, who would I go with?
Okay. Filling in some gaps because the hypothetical is a little bit open-ended at this point.
No, we'll make it real. Cause when looking at your freelance business, right?
Yeah.
Like, am I going to go with an agency? Is there an agency equivalent or comparable? Am I going to hire full time for this role? What else would I do?
Okay. So, well, candidly, let me just explain that many of my clients tend to be startups, and they're not kind of this Microsoft level organization. They are Series Seed through Series B for the most part. And in some cases, they've expanded beyond that, but they're in that early stage. So for that client base, the alternative to me is potentially using other freelancers, is hiring a full-time person, or is potentially, depending on the work, maybe even hiring a law firm. And the law firm I know for sure would bill by the hour, and I know their pricing.
Gotcha. Okay. So it would be, hey, here's law firm. And when working with you, what's the pitch that you see really working? Because this is also one of the tough parts of our space. We're better, we're faster, we're cheaper. But that doesn't always get the wallet, the credit card out. Sometimes it just gets a bunch of head nods, and then let me introduce you to so-and-so, let me introduce you to so-and-so. And so what are some of the job to be done's, the value factors? What really gets clients to say, yes, I'll go with you over the law firm?
Yeah. So in my case, it's probably three things. I'd say on one side, it's the fact that I've been a freelancer for many years. And so I've seen a good cross section of companies, and I've gotten to solve these kinds of problems repeatedly for a number of clients. The second thing is, of course, the price, the fact that I would be able to come in cheaper and be more flexible in terms of timing. And then the last piece is really around the fact that I've worked in a number of roles, unlike, a law firm, which is selling just law firm expertise. As an interim general counsel, I come in to help with both legal and business problems. And I have background in finance, in operations, and in working at startups that I can then leverage and just be a trusted part of the team and drop right into it very quickly.
Gotcha. So it's you make it about you, not the law firm. Because it's one of the dirty secrets is that when you go through the law firm, it's someone who's junior, who's really doing the work, but then someone who's higher, who's building their relationship with you, or what? Why not go with the law firm?
I think for the most part, two things. One thing is the price point. So law firms are very, very expensive. I'm sure everyone listening generally has some experience with that. But if you don't, there are several hundreds to 1,000 plus an hour. I am not. Then the other piece of it is the law firm really is a collection of very specialized experts. So if you have a tax question, you'll talk to the tax lawyer. If you have a funding question, you'll talk to the fundraising lawyer. You have a benefits question, you'll talk to somebody else within the firm. And then there's maybe one person kind of quarterbacking it, but not really. You'll be building new relationships for every problem you solve. Whereas as a freelancer, I'm really embedded into a lot of the strategic decisions at the company, knowing what direction to take things, what issues that might then open up. And then I quarterback all of this to find out who are the experts we need to help solve this specific problem if it's something that I can't do on my own.
So when looking at this analogy of, okay, do I go with the law firm? Because it's also consistent across, should I go with a freelancer or an agency, or why should I go with this freelancer over the next? Why not raise your price? Why compete on price? I guess is the way to put it. Why not charge 1,000 but offer something better? Why is price? Why are you leaving money on the table? Yeah.
long-term play as a freelancer. So if you are
Yeah.
if you are trying to compete on price, people are very selective in what they ask their law firms because they simply can't afford to have every question answered by a law firm. But if you have something that is within the company's budget and works for both of you, I mean, this is not a small amount of money we're talking about. It is, a couple $100s, few $100s an hour. We're not talking like 600 or 700. Maybe one day we will. I don't know if that'll be inflation or my experience going up, but regardless, like that could change. And so I think being able to really be part of this team and find the amount that works for you and then have that repeat work, have people refer you on to other folks. I mean, this is the sweet spot that I found kind of my price and my experience to work at, but that's why you do your research and you find out what other freelancers are charging and make sure you're kind of in this same bucket, because a law firm offers other things, right? They have a lot of infrastructure. They have a lot of documents and research and experts who are very niche. And that's great if you have a very complex, very technical problem. But for things that are kind of within the 80% of business, which is more ordinary course, you don't necessarily need, gosh, I don't know what the kitchen equivalent of this very precise, a scalpel, when you might actually just need a Swiss Army knife.
Yeah. Yeah, I hear you. And so for you, because, cost is such from a freelance perspective, cost is on the surface, it makes sense to say, hey, a freelancer's cheaper. But then actually it can shoot us in the foot lots of times, especially when we're talking about software developers, because usually freelance software developers are actually more expensive per hour than a normal one is. The difference is there's more cost efficiency. So instead of having that person for 6 months, you might only work together for a month or 2 months or 3 months. Or the reality is cost might not matter, because most times cost actually is not my main driver. It's generally just predictability. Is when this person says they'll do this, is that what they're going to do? And the reason I go with an agency is to pay for the premium to actually ensure that it's going to get done when it gets done. And if it doesn't, I at least have some terms in the contract or people to yell at, which with freelancers, that can be one of the things that's okay. This is also very risky. So what would you say, and we got hopping on 10 minutes, what would you say is some of the deciding factors of what makes a freelance project, a freelance engagement successful? And this is, keep in mind, this is from a client's perspective. What can leaders be doing to ensure that freelance projects go off without a hitch?
I think that freelance projects are successful partly on this cost front. Let me just go back to that. I agree with you. We have to look a little bit at the market, though. I think in a little frothier market, you might be able to focus entirely on communicating the value that you add. And I think the budgets are just larger. In this moment that we are in time, I think cost is the competitive advantage of freelancers, though totally, yes, on an hourly rate, I'm more than I would be for a full-time person, but it's just fewer hours and it's more efficient in that sense. So agree. In terms of what makes a freelance project successful, I think that having clear expectations of either the problem to be solved today or the long-term vision of this relationship is incredibly important. And most of the time people hire freelancers because there's a fire that needs to be put out today. And the reason freelancers stay is because both parties know that tomorrow there will be another fire, or, a few months down the road, there will be something else. And it just, by that time you have institutional knowledge, you have some trust, you have a good working relationship, kind of the way two at-will employees or an at-will employee will stay at a company that is also hiring it at will. I mean, it's a little more difficult for a company to end a relationship with a full-time employee, but it's not impossible, as we've seen in the news. I mean, companies figure it out and do it when they need to. So freelancers, it's a little bit less kind of structured in that sense, but it's the same thing that makes you a good manager. It's what made these fractional executives become VPs and be able to keep their managers happy and be able to anticipate the needs of the company, of their hiring manager, and then kind of go one step further. So a successful freelance project, of course, you do what was asked of you, but you're also looking around the road to see, what does this, now that this has been resolved, what does that lead us to? What is the next thing that will be around the corner for this manager, and how can I make it easier for them?
And for the manager themselves, right? So setting clear expectations is pretty crucial. But what are some other things that the manager should be doing to ensure a good project?
So two things. On the one hand, I think managers should really be understanding the expertise that freelancers bring, because freelancers have worked for multiple clients, probably on same or similar problems. And the manager, depending on their experience, may only have worked at this company or worked at one company at a time. I think it's rare that we're having freelancers be managers of freelancers. I think that's the next wave that's around the corner. So right now, understand that the freelancer is a bit of a market expert on their particular domain because they've just seen a broader cross section in recent history. And so that's one important thing. And then the second thing is make sure there's really clear communication, because it can be very partly tempting because managers are busy, but also challenging because there are, issues around privacy and security to actually integrate a freelancer into the team. But the better you can integrate a freelancer into a team, the much more value you can unlock for them, because then they can see what are the other related issues and how can they contribute to solve those. So to the extent that you're having, office happy hours virtually or in person, or kind of like a general Slack channel or messaging channel that people can join, have your freelancer in there too, because siloing them actually hinders them from giving you what you really need.
Yep. No, I couldn't agree more. So let's spend, less than 5 minutes, but I want to get technical about freelance teams and if it's real. I'll give you some context. So we started Venturel with the hypothesis of how do we make it possible for every individual to be a sustainable freelancer. So, we used making over $100,000 as the metric. And we went with the assumption that the way to do that would be to have an elastic network of people to refer work to, collaborate with. Now, we spent 2.5 years, over $1 million, building software to see if this would happen. And what we kept running into was very, very seldom was it actually working. And so every freelancer, ironically, it's kind of like unions. Everyone says they like unions, but no one actually really takes action on them. And so, we saw freelancers over and over saying, yes, I would love to be part of a team. Yes, I would love to do this. But then we would say, how many referrals have you made the past 6 months? Oh, 0. How many times have you actually collaborated with the freelancer? Oh, 0. And so we were seeing that the words weren't lining up with the actions. Even though it makes so much sense, right? Theoretically, for freelancers to team up. But on your end, right? What do you think? Do you see freelance teams being a thing? You tell me.
I think I've seen the same thing as you, which is there's always this very vocal desire to have the teams. But when it comes to the actual moment, I don't know that it's necessarily, it hasn't worked out in practice yet. In my experience, the way freelancers will collaborate with freelancers is when they sell a big project and then there are multiple tasks to be done. And then you start to, outsource it on a task basis. I think some freelancers are a little ahead of the game in terms of setting up a partnership where if they have a very repeatable offering, they can then know exactly who to call on for that next stage in the process. And those teams work well. But I think, one of the challenges of being a freelancer is there's always a little bit of customization project to project, especially if you're in kind of a fractional executive role. The problems of a company might overlap with the problems at another company that you've been hired to solve. But there's always that nuance about this particular client and getting embedded into their teams. And that can kind of hinder you from, cross-selling or collaborating with a much larger team. I think that as freelancers get more standardized in their offerings, this can work well, or have just a very loose network of referrals. That can also work well. But I think we're kind of in the early stages of people figuring out, what a freelance life looks for them individually. And then once they get that a little more stable, I think figuring out how to make it collective probably is the next wave.
Yeah, I hear you. I think my answer that I wish I didn't come to, because it's not what I wish for the world, but I think it's what's the reality of the world, is I don't think freelancers alone will be able to solve it. I think marketplaces will be the ones to solve it, just because they're most incentivized to go go win big projects and then actually be able to execute them. So I hear you. I hear you. So listen, so Joy, so now we have rocket round. You have less than 17 seconds to answer each question. We are going to start with if it's a Friday night or Saturday night in New York, where will we find you?
Oh, my latest thing is podcast mixers. So meeting a bunch of friends and somebody will record an episode of a podcast. And that is my, new passion.
That's a thing? Wait, tell me more.
This
sounds like such a New York.
Yeah, it's a very niche thing. I think only in New York. But so there's this one guy, I don't know if you know David Nipinski, who also has a podcast. And I think he started this little trend of recording as a solo experience that can be a little bit isolating, especially post-pandemic. So he's like, why don't we record in a group and have a bunch of people who are interested in the topic already be there, and then they can discuss afterwards. So yeah, that's one of my new favorites.
That is so, it's basically like a big Twitter space or a big, remember, like Clubhouse when that was a thing?
Yes, Clubhouse, but like 3D.
Yeah. Oh, that is so funny. Okay, let's say you're not in New York now. You're in Boston. Are you doing the same thing?
No.
No.
What am I doing in Boston?
Us the Boston.
I've gone to bed.
That is the perfect way to describe the two cities. All right, what about Nashua? Are you also in bed in Nashua?
Almost. No, I'm in the bowling alley.
I'm in the bowling.
I'm just
Perfect.
kidding.
Perfect. Okay, next question. What is your favorite movie or series that you're currently watching?
Good one. I watch Netflix as she panics. Haven't watched Netflix in so long. My favorite thing that I'm watching lately is stand-up. And so Eliza Schlesinger is fantastic, and I just watch all her stuff.
Oh my God. Okay, Eliza Schlesinger. Who else?
I like Hannah Gatsby a lot.
Hey, Gatsby. Okay, who else we got?
I mean, I can go down the rabbit hole. Of course, I like the classics like the Trevor Noahs and Fortune Feimster. I really recently watched her special. She was great. Michelle Buteau is another favorite. Yeah, I guess female stand-up comics is my new thing.
That's right. Are you going to consider me trashy for liking Bill Burr?
I think that I have a new YouTube rabbit hole to fall down because I'm not sure.
I don't know. What I will say was, being from Boston, we're expected to like him. And so inherently, I didn't like him. And then I actually listened to him, and I find him quite funny.
Great. So now I have a new answer for what I'm doing Friday and Saturday nights, and that's watching that.
I don't know. I think you're probably going to listen to one, because I think I've only listened to Trevor Noah a couple times, but I've noticed Trevor Noah and Bill Burr are kind of total opposites. So you might listen for 5 minutes and be like, this is disgusting, and this is too trashy for me. And to that, I will say, in Savannah, Georgia, it's more of a beer place, and we are quite trashy. Okay, next question. What is your favorite book? Yeah, let's just go. I have a feeling you're going to have way too many. Because you know what we've learned in the past 6 months is that most of our guests have too many books. So this question falls flat in my face. But what is your favorite book, or what is a couple of your favorite books?
Yeah, I think favorite is Grit by Angela Duckworth. I think it's just so brilliantly structured, the way she includes her own personal narrative, her journey of kind of discovering what it means to be a genius. And then it's part inspiration, part research, part memoir, and just really beautifully written. I've read it a million times and I could read it again.
I love it. So you only have one?
That's my favorite. You said people have too many. I mean, I can keep going.
No, I love it. Next question. What is your favorite quick food place in Cambridge? I'm going back to your Harvard days.
Yes. There is a taco place opposite Felipe's Taqueria. And I don't know why I can't remember the name right now because I'm on the spot. But it is directly... Huh? Do you know it?
It's not Anna's? Is it Anna's Taqueria?
No, it's not Anna's. Those are the two that have all the hype. There's one directly opposite in Harvard Square.
Yeah, I know.
And this one is open, I think, until like 4 a.m. or something, and then back up at 7. So you can pretty much get a taco almost any time of the day. And they are phenomenal.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, that's how you're showing my age, because when I was there, it was just Anna's, basically.
Yeah.
It was pretty good. Okay, you got two more questions, and this one's very, very just for Boston. Are you a Mike's or modern person?
Modern, 100%.
You're the first one, Joy. You were the first one that I've met that says modern.
What?
And I'll tell you what. Yeah, I'm Team Mike's. Not gonna lie. This is so great actually, because now we have, so you're Team Trevor Noah and modern, and I'm Team Bill Burr and Mike's. So we're seeing we would have a hell of a time. And I was Club Amber while you were in bed. That's what it was called, Club Amber. That's right. While you were at the bowling alley. So this is perfectly symmetrical. So John was recently in Boston, and I told him to make sure he said that he's Team Mike's. So hopefully he didn't get himself in trouble because of me. But okay, last question. Favorite animal and why?
Probably the octopus, actually, because I, like everybody else, watched that Netflix special, but they are so smart and so, I don't know, just such fascinating creatures, and we don't really think about them as much as probably we could. I don't know.
Joy, that is the most perfect answer, because guess what mine would be? Only because I'll give you a hint. It's the total opposite for the exact opposite reason.
What could that possibly be?
Guess.
Snail,
I'll give you a hint. There's
slug?
one sleeping on my floor. No, I'll give you a hint. There's one sleeping on my floor as we speak. And he grunted in the middle of this episode.
What is the opposite? Dogs are smart,
Here,
so...
I don't know if dogs are too smart. I don't know if he's
so
too smart.
cute.
You know, he's...
Oh my god,
Okay.
is it golden?
Buddy. Hey, it's a golden. He's just golden.
Those are the
as you
best.
get. Actually, there's a picture of him behind me right there. Yeah. So, all right. Well, Joy, it has been an absolute pleasure. Where can our listeners find you?
Yes, everywhere on the internet, Joy Batra. That's Batra. So joybatra.com. And my book is The Freelance Mindset, Unleashing Your Side Hustles for Better Work, Play, and Life. And that's available on Amazon and anywhere else books are sold online.
Hell yeah. All right, Joy, thank you for hopping on.
Thanks for having me.